Hello, good morning, everyone. Today we will discuss about cerebrovascular disease. So first, for the cerebrovascular disease, let us define stroke. So it's a clinical term applied to any abrupt or non-traumatic brain insult. So it is a blow from an unseen hand. So 75% consists of infarct and 25% for hemorrhage. So for ischemic stroke, it is caused by a block of artery to the brain, either from buildup of plaques within the artery wall or from clot. So two-thirds are from the thrombi and one-third are from the emboli. So for ischemic stroke, so what are the hyperacute signs? So it is seen within minutes to few hours after occlusion. So for CT scan, it is a hyperdense artery sign. So it means that the actual thrombus is within the intracranial vessels. And for MR, it is the loss of flow void. So normal black signals of flowing blood is lost and may be replaced by abnormal signals that may represent clot or slow flow. So for the vascular territories, so the anterior cerebral arteries supply a narrow band of the cerebral hemispheres adjacent to the midline. So the middle cerebral artery supplies the largest area of the brain. So for ACA, it means anterior cerebral artery territory. For MCA, it means middle cerebral artery territory. And for PCA, it means posterior cerebral artery territory. So for the vascular territories, the level of the cerebellum. So here is the example again of for ACA, MCA, PCA, and VBA or vertebrobasilar artery territory. So these are the vascular territories at the level of cerebellum. So at the level of the insula, so there are multiple tiny perforating branches. The middle cerebral artery that is supplied by the region of the basal ganglia and the insula. So for normal appearance of blood vessels on CT, so as you can see, okay, here's the right middle cerebral artery and the left middle cerebral artery. So that is the normal appearance of blood. So for ischemic stroke, hyperacute signs, we can see the hyperdense artery sign in the right middle cerebral artery. So this one's the normal, this is the hyperdense artery sign. So for the hyperdense artery sign, it means that there's a hyperacute ischemic stroke. So for ischemic stroke, hyperacute signs, the normal CT scan versus the hyperdense right MCA. So here's an image of a CT scan showing a thrombus in right middle cerebral artery. And for B, it shows a dot sign indicating that a distal clot in the M3 branch of the right middle cerebral artery is seen. For MRI, so here's the normal blood vessel. Okay. So for hyperacute sign, in MRI, there's a loss of flow void in the right MCA. So usually this is what we call the loss of the loss of flow void, but here is the abnormality seen in the right. So normal MRI versus the loss of flow void in the right MCA. So normally we can see some black tubes in the left in comparison to the right. So that means there is no blood that is flowing within the veins. So let us identify the abnormality. So there's a complete occlusion of the right internal carotid artery. So sa left, there's no normal flow void. So here's the abnormality. For acute MCA ischemia for CT scan, within 6 hours of MCA occlusion, so insular ribbon sign, it is a subtle blurring of the gray-white layers of the insula due to edema. So that is the insular ribbon sign. So edema may also be seen in the putamen. So the lentiform nucleus edema sign. For MRI, or DWI, it is the most sensitive imaging sequence for detection of brain ischemia. So again, for CT scan, within 6 hours of MCA occlusion. For MRI, DWI, it is the most sensitive. So it may turn positive within minutes after infarction begins. So for MRI, remember it's within minutes. For CT scan, within 6 hours. So MRI is more sensitive. So the hyperintense sign is what we call the light bulb sign. So the insula is located here. So the normal insula. So here's a quick image or illustration. The normal insula is located. So here's an image of a CT scan, the insula. And for MRI, this is the insula. So the lentiform nucleus. Lentiform nucleus consists of the putamen and the globus pallidus. So the putamen is an additional role in memory formation, more specifically the muscle memory. So remember, putamen plus caudate nucleus is the corpus striatum. For putamen plus globus pallidus, it is the lentiform nucleus. So here's the location of the caudate, putamen, the globus pallidus. So the putamen is more lateral in comparison to the globus pallidus, which is seen medially. So the internal capsule is between the globus pallidus and the thalamus. Okay, so that's the internal capsule. And lastly, the thalamus itself. So the globus pallidus serves to help movement and inhibit abnormal movement. So damage to this structure can cause involuntary limb shaking, like in Parkinson patients. For acute MCA ischemia, so the insular ribbon sign. So there's decreased attenuation and loss of gray-white matter. So this is the gray-white matter. So for insular ribbon sign, as we can see in the right, shown by arrow, there is loss of gray-white matter in the right insular region. So remember in our previous slide, the insular region. So ito yung normal, this is the abnormal one. So remember, if we're gonna talk about insular ribbon sign, that means that there's an impending ischemia. So 4 to 8 hours old ischemic stroke. So we can see the T2 and diffusion weighted imaging. For T2, there's high signal intensity and mild sulcal effacement. So it means the sulci cannot be well differentiated. So that is what effacement means in the left middle cerebral artery. So that means there's an edema. For DWI, there's a light bulb sign or acute infarct. So sulcal effacement. So CT scan versus MRI. So CT scan. In CT scan, we weren't able to see the acute infarct because maybe it has occurred very early and CT scan was requested. Where MRI, as we have said, or as I have said, it is very sensitive when it comes to infarct. So here's the light bulb sign seen in DWI. For subacute ischemia, peak at 3 to 7 days, edema leads to mass effect ranking from sulcal effacement to midline shift with brain herniation. So for sulcal effacement, this is an example of subacute infarct. For chronic ischemia, weeks to months after infarction, so there are the tissues that are removed, leaving a small mark or a gliotic scar. So the cerebrospinal fluid takes the space. So affected corticospinal tract, the Wallerian degeneration, seen as a shrunken appearance of ipsilateral cerebral peduncle. So there's also widening of the adjacent sulci and ex vacua dilatation of the ventricles. So here's an example of ex vacua dilatation of the ventricles adjacent to the infarcted area. So acute versus chronic infarct. So here's one acute. So the more chronic it is, the more darker it is. It may resemble the color of CSF. So for natural progression of infarction, so the non-contrast head CT is often negative within the first 4 hours of stroke. Okay, always remember that for non-contrast head CT scan, for infarct, it is often negative within the first 4 hours of a stroke. It generally takes 4 to 6 hours for changes of ischemia to manifest on CT scan. Okay, that is the magic number, 4 to 6 hours for us to be able to see the changes of ischemia in CT scan. So in this patient at 3 hours, okay, the head CT scan looks normal. So 1 day later, you start to notice the blurring of gray-white matter differentiation. It's pointed by the arrow. So after 3 months, we can see that it is more obvious. So there are areas of encephalomalacia or volume loss. So MR is much more sensitive in detecting early infarction than CT scan. So specifically, the DWA sequence can be positive within minutes of infarction. So DWI. If MR is more sensitive than CT to detect infarction, why is MRI not performed as the first test in patients presenting with stroke? So for treatment, okay, decisions are based on clinical symptoms alone for stroke and a negative head CT. So for MRI, if it is not available, so there's no option for us to choose MRI. So because always remember that CT is always widely available in comparison to MRI. And MRI takes more time to screen for patients and acquire images. So always remember that every second counts. So for hemorrhage, it occurs when an artery or vein ruptures. So it is divided into subarachnoid and parenchyma. So for non-contrast CT scan, it is the choice for emergency evaluation of suspected hemorrhage. So non-contrast CT scan. Although acute blood can sometimes be challenging to detect on routine MR, sensitivity is excellent when FLAIR is used for subarachnoid hemorrhage. So FLAIR is for subarachnoid hemorrhage. For T2 sequence, it is used for parenchymal bleeding. MR is better than CT for detection and characterization of subacute or chronic hemorrhage. Okay. So for hemorrhage CT scan, hemorrhages are detected because of increased attenuation. Imaging methods of choice for emergency evaluation in acute setting is CT scan. For hemorrhage, so MR signal of blood depends on a complex interplay of multiple factors. And the dominant mechanism is the oxidation state and localization of iron species related to hemoglobin. So always remember that MR is better than CT for detection and characterization of subacute or chronic hemorrhage. So here's the table for less than 1 day, 0 to 2 days, 2 to 14 days, 10 to 21, and 21 days. So that's T1 and T2 signal. So for the hemoglobin state, it evolves from oxyhemoglobin, deoxy, methemoglobin, intra, extra, and hemocyanin, ferritin, depending on the time. So as well as here, for the T1, T2 signal, we can see the dark, bright, etc. For subarachnoid hemorrhage, so it is most commonly due to aneurysm and rupture, and other causes includes drugs, trauma, dissection, and coagulopathy. So the most common presentation of aneurysm is sudden, severe headache, or sometimes described as the worst headache of their life. So aneurysms greater than 3 to 5 millimeters are at increased risk of rupture. So for subarachnoid hemorrhage, so the common locations include near the branch points of the circle of Willis. So nearly 85% spot from the anterior part of the circle of Willis, whereas 15% are from the vertebrobasilar artery. So 33% anterior communicating artery is the highest. So use of FLAIR sequence on MR can improve conspicuity of acute blood, but CT is still considered the imaging method of choice when clinical findings that suggest possible subarachnoid hemorrhage. So remember anterior communicating artery. So here, there's a diffused subarachnoid hemorrhage that is seen bilaterally, subarachnoid hemorrhage, in the sylvian fissure and the interhemispheric fissure. So there's intraventricular extension and global brain edema. So there's effacement caused by the edema. For flare sequence, it may improve MR detection. So flare shows subarachnoid hemorrhage. So for parenchymal hemorrhage, bleeding directly into the brain substance, so causes hypertensive hemorrhage. So the putamen is 35 to 50%. So these are the five most common location of hypertensive bleed. So remember nyo lang dyan is the putamen. So that is 35 to 50%. So for parenchymal hemorrhage or stroke CT scan, there's increased attenuation of CT. So plain CT scan, test of choice for emergency evaluation of suspected hemorrhage. So there's acute right thalamic hematoma with no extension in the occipital horn of the lateral ventricle as pointed by the arrow. So for parenchymal hemorrhage or the stroke, MRI or the GRE sequence, so there's susceptibility, color black. And for our GRE sequence, we can diagnose microbleeds early. So here in the image, we can see a bilateral thalamic hemorrhage. So these are the stages of hemorrhage in MRI. So here's an image for hyperacute, acute, early subacute, late subacute, and chronic. So as you can see, it's T1, T2, right? On the previous table, T1, T2, just look at the signals itself. So here, there's T1, bright, T2 dark. It's an early subacute intraparenchymal bleed in the right thalamus. So next, we go to meningitis. For meningitis, it can be caused by bacteria, fungi, parasite, or viruses. So bacteria is the most common cause. So patients can present with a relative acute onset of fever, neck stiffness, irritability, and headache, and may follow a decline in the mental status. So for imaging of meningitis, so always remember that CT scan performed in the emergency setting can show a normal image. So for inflammatory exudate caused by the meningitis, it may produce a high density or sabihin, white on CT scan and hyperintensity on flare sequence. So always look at flare for meningitis. So for flare sequence, we must identify or we must locate the subarachnoid spaces in the ventricles. For contrast-enhanced imaging, the meningeal enhancement can range from being absent or subtle from very thick and extensive. For neuroimaging, it is perhaps used more importantly later in the course of meningitis that are suspected for hydrocephalus, cerebritis, abscess, venous infarction, subdural effusion, empyema, or herniation. So for the enhancement patterns, so there's dural enhancement. So thick enhancement along the dura. This one is the pia subarachnoid. There's branching or invagination of the enhancement into the sulci and the fissure itself. So for meningitis, so there's a case of a 35-year-old man presented with headache. So for letter A, there's axial non-contrast scan shows obliteration of the sulci over the hemisphere. Siya. For B, there's subtle meningeal enhancement noted on contrast-enhanced CT scan. So for meningitis, this is a case of a 4-year-old boy with headache. So there's meningeal enhancement. So meninges. It is seen in bilateral parieto-occipital regions. Enhancement. So meningitis on MRI. So there's diffuse leptomeningeal enhancement in the orange arrows. There's failure of the CSF suppression within the subarachnoid spaces in the flare. So it indicates that there's something other than the CSF within these subarachnoid spaces. For seizure, first episode of seizure, what to rule out? Tumor, infection, and other acute processes for seizure. So what imaging modality do you request? So for that, we request for contrast-enhanced MR or contrast-enhanced CT scan. So if the patient's in the immediate post-ictal state, so residual neurologic deficit is present at the time of imaging. So immediate post-ictal states, so there's non-contrast CT scan should be obtained as the first study to exclude acute surgical pathology. Next, if the seizure disorder is chronic, so we request for detailed MR examination. So there's high resolution coronal image of the medial temporal lobes and other clinical suspected abnormal brain structures that are performed. So for the mesial temporal sclerosis, so hippocampal sclerosis, so hippocampus, it is the most common association with intractable temporal lobe epilepsy. So MRI is the modality of choice to evaluate the hippocampus. So findings include reduced hippocampal volume, increased T2 signal, abnormal morphology. So there's loss of internal architecture, stratum radiata, a thin layer of white matter that separates the dentate of the nucleus and the common horn. So here's the hippocampus part. Okay. So there's atrophy, or means it has been small, decrease in size. So beside that, there's increased T2 signal. Always compare. For headache, so frequent indication for imaging of the brain. So patients with thunderclap or worse of their clap of his life. So what do you request? Non-contrast head CT scan. So what ruled out? Subarachnoid hemorrhage, acute hydrocephalus, and enlarging intracranial mass. For headache, chronic headache, what imaging do you request? So if not accompanied by focal neurologic symptom, request for non-contrast MR scan. So if the headache is associated with neurologic symptoms or complaints, contrast is added. So when chronic headache is the sole presenting complaint, the yield of imaging is low. Typical uncomplicated migraine may not require imaging. So review. 59-year-old women develop sudden onset of left side weakness. Stat contrast head CT is ordered, which reveals what etiology of the symptoms. So there's hemorrhagic stroke in the right putamen. So there's surrounding hypodense edema, shown in the yellow arrow, hypodense, and the mass effect. So there, it means there's movement of the anterior horn of the right lateral ventricle. So for the putamen, this is a classic location for hypertensive hemorrhagic stroke in non-traumatic patients. So for our incidental findings, as pointed by the blue arrows, the incidental hyperdensities in the basal ganglia in the pineal gland are benign calcifications. So do not be confused with a foci of hemorrhage. So next, there's epidural hematoma. So it is a convex shape. Areas of low attenuation are seen within the hematoma. So yellow arrow. So there are some areas of low attenuation, indicating that there's active hemorrhage. Okay? So if there's an area or small area of low attenuation seen within the hematoma itself, there's active hemorrhage. So the cause of hematoma is not readily apparent on the initial image. But when the viewing windows are adjusted, It may be optimized for the bones. So there's soft tissue swelling and a skull fracture. So next, a case of a 50-year-old male, known hypertensive and diabetic. So 3 hours of history of right-sided body weakness and slurring of speech. What pertinent CT scan finding can you see? So as we can recall, there's hyperdense left middle cerebral artery. So it indicates that there's hyperacute infarct in the left MCA territory. So that is insular ribbon sign. So next, so the CT scan demonstrates an extensive subarachnoid hemorrhage. So we can see a high density focus within the suprasellar cistern, okay, as well as edema because of the effacement. So what can we see? So there's loss of gray white matter, and in this way, the differentiation is very hard, as well as sulcal asymmetry. There's left middle cerebral artery territory, ischemic stroke. Lastly, a 64-year-old patient, smoker, known diabetic and hypertensive. So 5 hours prior to consult, there's left-sided hemiparesis. So what important subtle finding do you see? And what is your diagnosis? So here's the insular ribbon sign in the right because of the gray white matter differentiation difference. So what is your diagnosis? Acute infarct, right MCA territory. So that is for our last slide. So thank you.